What if everything you thought you knew about love was a lie? You may think being attractive, successful, or kind is the key to winning her heart, but the truth runs much deeper. Today, we're peeling back the curtain to reveal the emotional code behind how women really fall in love, and why so many men get it all wrong. Let's dive in. Most people go through life with a completely misunderstood view of love, especially when it comes to women. Society teaches men to believe that if they're likable enough, make good money, or have the right looks, they'll automatically be seen as desirable. But here's the twist. Those traits alone rarely guarantee lasting attraction. Women don't fall in love the way men typically assume. It's not about checking boxes like status, logic, or appearance. Love, for women, is primarily emotional. It's not calculated. It's felt. A man can have the full package on paper: confidence, success, even a charming personality. But if he fails to ignite strong emotional experiences within her, he becomes invisible, forgotten, replaceable. Understanding female psychology isn't about playing tricks or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about tuning into the way attraction really works and realizing that it lives in the emotional world, not in the rational one. That's why some men make a permanent mark, while others vanish without a trace. In this video, we're going to unpack 5 core principles that shape how a woman experiences love and attraction. These truths explain why chasing a woman usually pushes her away, why being the nice guy often falls flat, and what really makes a woman stay invested for the long run. As we mentioned before, it's not about how a man looks on paper. It's about how he makes her feel. That's the key. So let's dive into the first core principle that reveals why some men leave a lasting impact. Sign. #1. Women don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with how you make them feel. This might sound simple, but it flips the entire male mindset about relationships on its head. Women aren't emotionally drawn to men just because they're attractive, successful, or kind. Those traits alone aren't enough. What captivates a woman is the emotional world a man creates around her. The way he lights her up, energizes her, makes her feel seen, alive, and even a little uncertain in the best way. For women, love isn't a checklist. It's not a series of logical steps or carefully weighed pros and cons. It's more like a storm, unpredictable, intense, and electric. A surge of emotions that can't be reasoned with. That's why 2 men can say the exact same thing to a woman, and yet only one of them will stay in her memory. One might look perfect on paper, respectful, successful, reliable, but if he doesn't awaken anything within her, he fades into the background. Just another polite man in a sea of polite men. Meanwhile, the man who playfully teases her, makes her laugh, challenges her just enough to spark curiosity, he's the one who lingers in her thoughts. Even if he isn't the most conventionally perfect guy, the emotional imprint he leaves behind is unforgettable. Here's where so many men get it wrong. They think showcasing stability, status, or relentless devotion is the way to a woman's heart. As if love is some kind of business deal. Put in the right inputs, get the desired outcome. But attraction doesn't follow logic. It doesn't reward predictability. It craves surprise. It feeds on tension. It grows in the spaces between certainty and mystery. A woman doesn't fall for a man because he provides safety alone. She falls because he brings energy, adventure, and a spark that keeps her guessing. He doesn't make her feel like she's solving a puzzle. He makes her feel like she's stepping into a story. That's why the most unforgettable men master something deeper, emotional imprinting. They build tension with playful teasing. They spark excitement through unpredictability. They create intimacy by sharing real vulnerable moments. They don't try to impress her mind, they move her emotionally, and that's what sticks. And when that emotional connection is strong, the bond no longer feels like a rational choice. It becomes a magnetic pull, an experience she feels more than she understands. As we just uncovered, what keeps a woman hooked isn't perfection, it's emotional impact. But here's the twist. The more effort you pour into chasing her, the more that emotional spark begins to fade. Sign number 2. The more you chase, the less she feels. Many men don't realize this at first. It feels intuitive to think, if I show her I care more, she'll care more too. But attraction doesn't grow through relentless pursuit. It grows in the gaps, in the anticipation, the curiosity, the emotional tension that lives in the unknown. Men often believe that texting more, calling more, showing up constantly, and proving how devoted they are will win her over. But in reality, that overpresence can quietly smother the very attraction they're hoping to build. Why? Because women, like all humans, are drawn to what feels scarce, not what's constantly available. When something seems guaranteed, it naturally loses its mystery. And with that, its emotional charge. When a woman knows exactly how you'll respond, when she senses that you're always just one message away, the thrill begins to vanish. Not because she's ungrateful, not because she's playing games, but because the human brain values things it has to work for. A man who's too available, always saying yes, always replying within seconds, always seeking to please, sends an unconscious message. My time and attention are easy to get. They cost nothing. And when something costs nothing, it often feels like it's worth nothing. Here's the painful irony. In trying to keep her close, many men make themselves predictable, and that predictability slowly dissolves her desire. When she no longer has to wonder what you're thinking or doing, she no longer feels that sense of wonder about you. The result? She stops thinking about you, stops missing you, stops investing. And when that happens, no amount of chasing can bring the connection back to life. But the men who do maintain long-term attraction understand something deeper. They don't chase, they lead. They don't over-explain, they hold their frame. Instead of pouring all their energy into gaining her approval, they stay centered in their own direction and purpose. They create a rhythm of presence and absence, giving enough to engage, yet pulling back enough to leave space. They don't try to overwhelm her with attention. They allow her to feel the absence. And from that space, desire begins to grow. It's not about being manipulative. It's about understanding emotional pacing. A woman should never feel like she's figured you out completely. She should feel just enough certainty to stay close, and just enough mystery to keep thinking about you when you're gone. That tension is where attraction lives. Because in the end, love isn't just about what you give, it's about what she feels compelled to give back. As we just explored, when a man stops chasing and starts leading, something powerful happens. A woman steps forward, not because she feels pressured, but because she wants to. And that shift in energy changes everything. Sign number 3. Women don't want a nice guy. They want an unshakable man. Many men are raised to believe that being endlessly nice is the secret to a woman's heart. Be polite, be gentle, be agreeable. Never argue, never upset her, always put her needs first. That's the formula, right? But over and over again, those same nice guys find themselves left behind, overlooked, or stuck in the dreaded friend zone, watching as the women they care about are drawn to men who seem to break all those polite rules. Why does this happen? Because deep down, women aren't just looking for someone who's kind. They're looking for someone strong. Sure, they'll say they want a kind, respectful man, and they do. But kindness alone isn't enough. What truly draws a woman in is a man who's confident in himself. A man who stands firm in his beliefs, who isn't afraid of disagreement, who doesn't crumble at the first sign of conflict. Being too nice often masks fear, the fear of rejection, of upsetting her, of losing her. And that fear is exactly what causes a woman to lose respect. If a man is constantly bending over backward to please her, avoiding any friction just to keep things smooth, he may think he's being the ideal partner, but to her, he's slowly becoming invisible. Because whether they're aware of it or not, women test for strength. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's as subtle as disagreeing with your opinion just to see if you'll back down. Other times, it's noticing how you react under stress. Do you stay calm? Do you stand tall, or do you shrink and seek constant reassurance? A man who remains grounded, who listens, but doesn't waver, commands attention. His calm presence signals leadership, maturity, and security. That's magnetic. The real mistake many men make is confusing approval seeking with love. They say yes to everything. They avoid confrontation. They hope that making her life easy will make her love them more. But in truth, it does the opposite. Women don't respect men who fear conflict. They respect men who manage it with grace. A man who respects himself, his boundaries, his time, his values, is far more compelling than one who gives it all away to avoid upsetting her. Now, that doesn't mean you should become cold or distant. The strongest men are not aggressive or dismissive. They're simply anchored. They know when to compromise and when to stand their ground. They're not afraid to say no when it matters. And most importantly, they're willing to walk away if their self-worth is being compromised. That's what makes a man truly attractive. Not how loudly he speaks, but how confidently he holds his silence when it counts. A woman may test his limits, challenge his stance, even push his buttons. But if she senses that his self-respect is untouchable, that he won't trade it for approval, she trusts him more. She admires him more. Because she sees a man who leads himself before leading anyone else. She doesn't want a man who begs for her validation. She wants a man who already carries his own dot, as we just explored. Women are drawn not to men who chase approval, but to those who embody unshakable self-worth. That same principle applies in the next key truth, one that often gets overlooked, yet it explains why so many well-meaning men unintentionally sabotage their own attractiveness. Sign #4. Love is a game of perception, not just reality. It might sound strange, but a woman doesn't actually fall in love with the literal man standing in front of her. She falls in love with how she perceives him, the version of him that lives in her mind. Her emotions, her attraction, her longing, they're all tied to the story she tells herself about who he is. This is why two women can meet the exact same man and have completely different reactions. One might find him captivating, confident, magnetic, full of charm. The other might find him arrogant, even boring. What changed? Not the man, but the lens through which each woman saw him. Attraction isn't just built on facts. It's shaped by impression, by narrative, by mystery. A man who reveals everything about himself too quickly, who lays all his cards on the table, removes any room for intrigue. And once that intrigue is gone, so is the tension. So is the spark. Predictability may feel safe, but it doesn't stir the heart. The truth is, most men assume that being open and honest about everything will automatically make them more appealing. They think, if I just show her the real me, she appreciate it. But attraction doesn't work like a resume review. It's not a passive process. It's an emotional experience, one that's fueled by how a man presents himself, not just who he objectively is. If a man lets a woman define his image without being intentional, he blends into the background. If he's constantly available, overly transparent, and eager to please, he removes the most powerful element of attraction, the unknown. And let's be honest, what excites the heart more than a little mystery? The men who keep women deeply engaged over time understand this. They're not playing childish games, they're simply aware of how to keep a woman emotionally invested. They introduce just enough uncertainty to keep her mind wondering and her emotions activated. They invite her to discover them, rather than hand over a full biography on day one. They make her feel like every interaction is a new page in a story that's still being written. This doesn't mean being manipulative. Far from it. It means creating a relationship that breathes, one that feels alive with curiosity, spontaneity, and personal independence. A woman doesn't stay emotionally invested because everything is calm and comfortable. She stays because there's still movement, still excitement. Too much stability without stimulation leads to emotional flatness. Yes, women want security, but they also crave the highs, the unexpected moments, the spark that reminds them they're alive. The best relationships strike that rare balance. She feels both safe and thrilled. She knows she's valued, but she also knows she hasn't completely figured him out. And that's what keeps her coming back. Scarcity also plays a massive role here. A man who gives all his time and energy without requiring any effort, in return loses value fast. Not because he's not enough, but because he's too available. When something is easily accessible, it's often taken for granted. But when a man prioritizes his own goals, protects his time, and doesn't drop everything at her feet, she views him differently. She sees him as someone with direction, with drive, with purpose, not someone just waiting to orbit her world. In the end, love isn't just about who you are. It's about how she experiences you, emotionally, energetically, perceptually. As we just uncovered, a woman doesn't fall in love with facts, she falls in love with how she experiences you. And once her perception shifts, everything can change, even if you remain exactly the same. Sign number 5, if she feels safe with you, she never leave. A woman's emotions, much like the tides, are in constant motion, sometimes calm, sometimes crashing, sometimes pulling back without warning. To the untrained eye, this emotional rhythm may seem chaotic, but beneath all those waves lies something still and steady, her deepest need, emotional safety. Unlike men, who often seek excitement, challenge, or conquest in relationships, a woman's heart longs for something more grounded. Stability, security, trust. These aren't just nice extras. They're non-negotiables. When a man offers this kind of emotional grounding, something powerful happens. He becomes irreplaceable. Sadly, most men miss this. They believe that passion, grand gestures, or adrenaline-filled adventures are what keep a woman invested. And while those things can attract her at first, they're not what makes her stay. excitement fades, butterflies calm down. Even the strongest passion will eventually ebb. What remains, what determines whether she feels safe to open her heart, is how steady she feels beside you when she's most vulnerable. A woman may be initially pulled toward the man who excites her, but she will only stay with the man who makes her feel safe to be herself, fully, emotionally, and without fear of judgment. Her emotional states come in cycles. One day, she might be affectionate, glowing with warmth and devotion. The next, she might be quiet, cold, or even distant. And here's the key: that doesn't mean something is wrong. It's just the natural rhythm of feminine energy, unpredictable, yet deeply human. Most men, not understanding this, make one of two mistakes. They either try to fix her mood immediately, as if it's a problem to be solved, or they take her emotional shift personally and react defensively. Both responses backfire. Why? Because in those moments, what she truly needs isn't the solution. She needs a safe space. She needs to feel that your emotional state isn't tossed around by hers. She doesn't need a fixer. She needs an anchor. When she's upset, don't panic. Don't lecture. Don't try to talk her out of her emotions. Instead, listen. Let her feel what she feels without judgment. Be present. Hold the space. Let her know, through your calm, steady presence, that she's safe to unravel and still be loved. She needs to know that no matter how messy or intense her emotions get, you remain solid. That's what separates forgettable men from unforgettable ones. Some men respond with logic, trying to explain away her feelings. Others become reactive, frustrated, or cold. But the man who holds his composure, who doesn't get swept up in the storm, becomes her emotional safe haven. Because here's the truth: if a woman knows she can break down in your arms, fall apart without fear, cry without shame, and still be held with strength and understanding, she will never want to leave that space. And once she experiences that level of security, not just physical, but emotional, she won't look for it elsewhere. Now let's be clear. Emotional safety doesn't mean being emotionless. It doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means being in control of your reactions. It means showing her, not through words, but through consistent actions, that you're someone she can count on when things get difficult, that it shows up in the quiet moments, the way you hold her when she's overwhelmed, the way you breathe deeply instead of reacting sharply, the way you stay present when she's drowning in fear or anxiety. It's those moments that make her think, he's different. And when a woman feels that, when she knows that your presence calms her chaos, she no longer needs to be convinced to stay. She stays because her soul feels at home. As we explored earlier, when a woman feels truly safe, emotionally, mentally, and energetically, she forms a bond that's hard to break. And in today's world, where many men react out of insecurity or emotional volatility, the man who offers grounded stability becomes the one she simply cannot walk away from. Because attraction isn't born out of logic or reason, it's an emotional experience. One shaped by perception, mystery, anticipation, and above all, a deep-rooted sense of security. Women don't fall in love just because a man is kind, wealthy, or attractive. They fall for the way he makes them feel, the emotional journey he takes them on. That's what imprints her memory, not a checklist of qualities. A man who understands this truth doesn't waste his energy chasing approval or trying to prove he's good enough. He isn't obsessed with constant availability or validation. Instead, he focuses on how he shows up with calm strength. emotional leadership, and a sense of presence that keeps her emotionally engaged. Too many men make the mistake of believing that if they just give more, prove more, and stay endlessly consistent, the woman will eventually love them for who they are. But love, for women, isn't a result of rational thinking. It's not a transaction. It's an imprint, a sensation, a memory tied to moments that are felt, not explained. What leaves the deepest mark are the emotions that catch her off guard, the spontaneous laughter, the quiet protection, the thrill of not knowing what's coming next. That's what makes a man unforgettable. And this is why chasing, no matter how well-intentioned, often backfires. Once a woman knows she fully has you, that nothing about the dynamic feels uncertain or thrilling anymore, her emotional system begins to shut down. The chase is over, and so is the spark. Her attention starts to drift, seeking something that reawakens that emotional aliveness, something unpredictable. That's why strength will always be more attractive than niceness. A man who's overly agreeable, who constantly tries to avoid conflict and please her at all costs, unknowingly lowers his perceived value. Why? Because women don't test strength to be cruel or manipulative. They test to feel secure, to feel reassured that the man beside them won't collapse under emotional pressure. And when you do fold, when you betray your own boundaries just to keep the peace, when you adjust your behavior to match her moods, something shifts. She loses respect, even if she doesn't realize it consciously. But the man who holds his ground, who remains calm under pressure, who doesn't let outside emotions dictate his inner state, that man earns something much deeper than temporary affection. He earns her respect. And with respect comes trust. With trust comes real connection. Always remember, perception shapes attraction. A woman doesn't fall for the objective version of you. She falls for the story she tells herself about who you are. If you let her write that story based on predictable behavior and constant availability, she may see you as safe, but ordinary. But if you lead the narrative by embodying emotional strength, creating moments of tension and relief, offering consistency mixed with subtle mystery, you become unforgettable. She won't fully understand why she's drawn to you, and that's what keeps her coming back. In the end, excitement may spark desire, but emotional security is what builds lasting devotion. And now that you've learned the 5 principles that define how women experience love, let's bring it all together and explore how to apply this knowledge in your own life and relationships. As we've seen, attraction isn't a fixed formula, it's an emotional rhythm. And just like the tides, a woman's emotions come in waves. One moment she may feel deeply connected, open, affectionate. The next she might seem withdrawn or cold. But this doesn't mean she's unreliable. It simply means she's human, processing emotions in real time, in her own way. And here's the key difference between the men she forgets and the man she can't live without. The man who panics, who scrambles to fix her feelings, or who takes her emotional shifts, personally, reveals a lack of emotional resilience. He shows her that his state is easily swayed by hers. And over time, that erodes the trust. But the man who stays calm, who doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, doesn't try to fix her, becomes something else entirely. He becomes her anchor, someone she can lean on, not just when things are easy, but especially when things are hard. Someone who doesn't demand emotional perfection from her, but instead holds steady, even when the storm rolls in. So, what's the real lesson here? Stop chasing, start leading. Stop begging for connection, and start becoming the kind of Man who naturally inspires admiration and emotional trust. Because women don't fall in love with the checklist version of you, not your status, not your resume, not your smile. They fall for how they feel when they're around you. And when you stand firm, not with force, but with calm, grounded strength, you stop trying to prove your worth. Because you've already become a man who radiates it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you seen these patterns play out in your own relationships? Which lesson hit hardest for you, and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you found value in today's insights, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deeper dive into the real psychology of attraction, emotional strength, and self-mastery. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and most importantly, keep her guessing. See you in the next one.